Hey, so we're back with another video. So this one, we're going to go over how to create gRPC, Unary APIs. In the last video, we created RESTful APIs using the Gen library, and today we're going to be using the gRPC library to create a Unary API project. So if you're not familiar with Unary, or if you're not familiar with gRPC APIs, they're a way to send messages from a Go client to a Go server, or whatever language you're using. In this case, I'm using Go. So it will send a request to the Go server, and then the Go server will do its processing, and then it'll send it back in a response message. Now this architecture looks very similar to a RESTful API, but the benefits with the gRPC API is that it's supposed to be faster. It supports low latency and high throughput communication. And another thing that the gRPC library has to offer is that you can implement bidirectional programming. So you can have a bidirectional stream. So in the case of bidirectional, instead of the connection being closed right after the response is sent from the Go server, what will happen is there will be a stream that will be open from the client to the server, and requests will be sent to the server, and responses will be coming back to the client until that connection is either closed by the client or the server. Because in this case, with even with the Unary call, the request will be sent to the Go server, and then the response will be sent back to the Go client, and then the connection is closed. So the bidirectional streaming is a very useful tool if you want to keep that line of communication open. But in this case today, we're just going to be going over the Unary calls that gRPC supports. So the first thing that we want to do is install the libraries that are needed so that we can create these protocol buffer files. So the first thing we want to do is install protobuf. So this will install the protocol compiler plugins that are needed specifically for the protobuf files to be generated. And then the next thing we want to do is just make sure that everything was installed correctly. So we'll just check proto-c --version. Cool. So now we can see that this was installed properly. You can see the library name. And then the next we want to do is install the compiler plugins that are needed specifically for Go. So we're going to do brew install proto-c -gen-go. Nice, that was installed. And the next thing to do is same thing, but with gRPC at the end. Nice, so those are all the files that are packages that we need for this project. The next thing I want to do is just head over to the extensions in VS Code, and I want to go ahead and install this VS Code Proto 3. So this is going to help with highlighting syntax within our proto file. If you don't install this plugin or a plugin similar to this, it's just going to look like a regular old text file, and you're not going to get any highlighting to signal whether or not your syntax is off or anything like that. So let's go ahead and install that. Nice. So that installed pretty quick because I already had it installed earlier. And then the next thing we want to do is let's just go ahead and create the module for this file or for this project. So we'll do go mod init github.com, then your username, and then after that, something that's specific to this project. So I'm just going to call it messages because I've defined my project name to be messages. Nice. So now we have our Go module defined for our project, and we have all our plugins that we need. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to get started by writing the protocol definition. So I'm going to create another directory to hold this protocol definition. So we'll call email messages. Not just because I'm going to create a project of APIs that's going to support email messages. You can call it whatever you'd like. So inside that, I'm going to call the file inside the same thing as the directory with .proto. So now we have our protocol definition file created. Now let's go ahead and start filling it out. So I don't have the template defined with me right now, so I'm just going to head over to Google and then change this. So just to kind of go back to show what I Googled, I just Googled an example of a protocol definition file for Golang with service names. And yeah, I could have generated this with GitHub Copilot, but I'm so used to Google. So the next thing we're going to do is just kind of go through this file and manipulate it to fit our needs. So the package name will be the same as the directory. So it's going to be email messages in my case. And then we're going to import the Go package. So the package will be the path to the module, to the Go module. So in our case, if we look here in our Go mod file, it's this GitHub path here. And along with that is going to be the directory name for this package, which is email messages. Nice, so that's done. And another thing I like to do is just have my services listed on top and then my message definitions out on the bottom. So I'm just gonna go ahead and swap these. And I'm only gonna define one service, so I'm gonna take one of these out. And yeah, I'll leave this as is. So in my service definition, there's going to be functions that I will have defined. So overall, you can think of the whole thing as one big service. And inside that service, you're going to have different functions that can be implemented. And then within those services, or within those functions, are going to be different data types called messages that are going to be accepted. And down here, as you can see, this request is defined as having a string variable or field named message. And you always want to number them starting with 1. That's just the syntax for this file. So I'm creating a file for email message service. So we're going to call it email, and change this to email message service. And I want to send an email as my function. And then it's going to take an email request. And it's going to send back an email response. Nice. So I want to modify this email request so that it fits my needs. So I'm going to send in a subject as the first one. And the next thing I want to do, this is very good GitHub Copilot, is send in a body. But the first thing I want to do, next thing I want to do actually is just put in an array of recipients. So I'm going to do repeated string, which means basically like a string array, and then the name of my field, which is recipients, and then we'll do body. As you can see, GitHub Copilot is very anxious to do that one next. And then sender name as my next field. So that's it for my email request so far. We'll just leave it like that. And then the next thing I want to do is define my email response. So I'm going to do bytes and then message ID. So this is just kind of so like when you're thinking about a production environment, you want to have IDs for each request to kind of just be able to go back and through the logs and check and see what happened within a certain transaction. And you can use an ID to go through and find it, something that's unique. So in this case, I'm just going to call this message ID, and it's going to be sent back in a response. And then we're going to send back a message just saying whether or not it was successful. And that's it. So this is the protocol buffer definition file, or you can call it protobuf file. So this one is complete. We have no more work to be done here. So now we have that file, but we need to create Golang files that kind of act as, or we need to generate Golang files that are able to communicate back and forth between protocols. So we have protobuf and we have Golang. So these are two different languages, so we need to be able to translate it. So we use the protoc command to be able to create files that will allow us to convert from protobuf to Golang. So I already have that command here. So key things in here in this command that I changed from the syntax that was given online was to say that in go out, I want to, after the files have been compiled and generated, I want them to be in this specific directory that I'm in. But right now, I actually need to go to that directory I want to be in, which is email messages, because that's where my proto file is located. So yes, I want the files to be generated. When they're generated, I want them to be output in this current file, which would be email messages. And I wanted to use the source files that are relative. And then the next thing I want to do is just make sure I'm referencing the right proto file. Nice. So you can see that these files have been generated. They will act as the bridge between protobuf and Golang. So you can see that there's some highlighted text here. There's some errors. So we'll just run a go mod tidy to get those dependencies resolved. Nice, all that's good. So the next thing we want to do is implement the interface that is defined here. So this interface requires that that the send email function be defined and used. I think mainly just defined or implemented. And when I say implemented, I mean the function has some instructions listed of what it should be doing. So it should have that definition defined. Because the interface here is just kind of like a placeholder of telling you what the function should take in and what it should return in the name. And that's pretty much it. After that, it's your responsibility to go ahead and define the function, send email, and the behavior that it should have. So we'll go back to our parent directory and we'll create another file or another folder. I'll name it server and create a file in here called server.go. And inside server.go is where we're going to actually define the function for send email. So let's run another, let's just go ahead and save. Save, and then go mod tidy. So you can see that it has resolved these errors up here. We've imported everything, and then I had a different name from other ones, so I just need to make sure I'm using the right one. Implemented. I think mine should be email message, yes. And it's saying that it's getting an error here, and that's because I changed this from my last time that I'd done it to something different, so message ID. And I can check that by going back to my proto file to see what that email response should take in. So you can see here, it should be message ID, whereas before it was just ID. So naming is very important. It doesn't just take it in based on the place that it's in. It's specific to the name that's associated with it. Okay, in my case, I don't need to use this. All right, so that's good. One extra field that was not needed. So we're implementing the email message service server. It has a function defined here. This is considered to be a special receiver argument. So as you can see here, this special receiver argument has the same name here as the struct, and that's what we're doing in this as well. So we're implementing this, we're creating a function that will be tied basically to this struct type. So the struct type will have the email, send email associated with it. It's going to pass in a context, and it's going to pass in the request type email request, and it's going to send back an email response. Now you see this PB in front. This is letting us know that this is tied to the protocol buffer that was defined in our proto file. It's not a struct as like you would see here for email message server. So two different things to make sure that you know that it's a protobuf data type, not a Golang data type. That's very important to note. The next thing that we're doing here is creating an ID, and that ID is getting passed into a message ID field here, which is going to come back in the email response. And then we're just sending back a message here with the request subject that we've received from the email request from the user earlier, and just putting that back in the message saying that it was sent successfully. And that's pretty much it for that. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and create a listener and start our gRPC service. So that's code I have here from earlier. Right, so let's start at the top of this main function. So we're creating a listener that's going to listen at this 9001 port, and it will just generate an error if it fails to be able to listen, and if it doesn't throw an error, it's going to return that it's listening on that port. And then the next thing we do is we create a new server, a new gRPC server, state that it's now registering the service server, and that is passing in the server itself, and then a pointer to, or the address to an empty struct of email message server. To be honest, I'm not sure about this, the reasoning why this has to be done. I just kind of took it from an example I'd seen online. The next thing that we're doing is we're just saying that it was registered successfully, and then we're serving that gRPC service or server. So yeah, so now let's just go ahead and run and see what we get. Nice, so everything is running successfully. Now we want to be able to test. So let's go over to Postman. So we've done some REST API testing in Postman before. Now we want to go ahead and test gRPC. So you're going to click New at the top and then select gRPC. So now we have this selected. Now we want to be able to access those methods. So the way it works with gRPC is that you're going to upload the proto file definition, and then Postman is going to basically be waiting for those fields, or it's going to be expecting those fields, and it will show you actually what those fields will be. So we're going to go ahead and import that. Proto file was already there, so it's right there for me. But if you're not there already, just navigate into your project to where that .proto file will be. And then now you can see in the list that we have that send email function. So we're just going to go ahead and choose that. And then for our URL, it's going to be HTTP localhost, because we're just working locally on our laptop. And then the port number is coming from here, from the port that we've created for our listener. Nice, that looks good. The definition is uploaded. So now we're just going to go ahead and start to populate the fields that should be passed into the request. So if you didn't see over here, I just clicked this little icon over here for documentation, and it allows you to see what the definition is for the request and for the response. So our subject is going to take in a string. So we'll have subject, and then we'll say superheroes unite. All right, and then our recipients, we'll just find who our recipients will be. We'll say, well, Spider-Man at gmail.com, and we'll send it out to Batman too. The next thing we'll define as the body. Superheroes, help is needed. All right, and then we'll put our sender name. Who will it be? We'll say Nick Fury. We'll say Nick Fury is a sender. So that's our message that will be sent to the gRPC server, and let's go ahead and invoke that. Nice, so we got the message ID that we generated, and then we also have the message being sent back saying that it was done successfully, and we just taken the subject to be put in here to just kind of signify that we're actually able to get requests, to get the data from the request and send it back. So yeah, that's the gRPC API development. That's how you would create a Unary one specifically. I'll go ahead and create other videos on the other types of gRPC APIs, but yeah, that's the one for Unary, and I hope it was helpful. Have a great day.